Okay, so we're back, and in between videos, I was looking around my model again, and I was going to start with the UV unwrapping, but actually I think I'm going to start with the lighting first. And the reason I want to do that is, to be quite honest, I'm tired of looking at this thing in its flat form, you know, with its different colours, and that I want to get a more realistic view or representation of it, you know, just to give me a kind of a moral boost and think, yeah, that looks good, and you know, want to get myself onto the next stage. So it's fine. So really, I think the first thing we need to do is remove these materials, these different coloured materials. So if I select, say, this foot part now, and if I remove that material, and I'll go around and I'll do that for everything else I've got a material on. So let's remove that. Remove that. So we're back to this mono-coloured kind of view now. Alright, so this is the way I work. Different people work in different ways, but I like to work this way. So I want to view this thing kind of like in a black and white, but in a lighted setting, and it will give me, you know, a much better idea of what kind of detail is going to come out, and you know, if I need to do some more modelling or some more modifying or what have you. So what I like to do is have a look at this in an ambient occlusion view. Now in our properties panel here, we do have an option for ambient occlusion, and if I toggle that on, you can see it does kind of add this faux shadow, this fake shadow kind of thing. Ambient occlusion is often called shadowing, but it's not. It's something entirely different, but it's a very similar kind of effect. Okay, and you know, we got some options here that we can, you know, kind of play with to give it a view, but I think that default at 1, didn't it? Yeah. But to be honest, this is forced onto this viewport. It's not accurate. What I like to do is have a look at it in a rendered view. So before we go to rendered view, we need to add the ambient occlusion here. Okay, so if I go into rendered view, because we're in cycles, it's going to take a couple of seconds to render up, but I'll go through this step by step. So you know, you can see the steps that we need to set up for cycles and lighting. So I can go to rendered view down here, which is pick up rendered view, or I can use my keyboard shortcut, which is the Z or the Z key. I've got pie menus enabled, so rendered view, and here we go, and that's looking pretty awful. Well, not awful, but this kind of very contrast, this dark background and the white bed, because the materials are essentially white on it, and it's not showing up much detail. It's not something that I like. So let's go back to solid view here. First thing we need to do is add some lighting of some description. So in our world tab, surface, okay, use colour. Now you see this colour corresponds with this colour here. We want a more of a white. Okay. Now if I go into a render view, you can see I've got a more of a sky coloured background. Okay, but essentially what is happening is, let me come out of render view. Is this bed, if I turn off the grid floor, this bed is essentially floating in space, and that doesn't happen. We need to kind of add a scenery or a backdrop to it, you know, something which would be more natural to its normal setting. So I'm just going to center my 3D cursor here with the Shift C. Okay, and I'm going to add a floor, basically a plane. Scale it out to more of a room size. Okay, so now once again, if I go into rendered view, right, okay, you can see where we're starting to cast shadows on previews there. Preview obviously is shown on white. Okay, since we're using nodes, let's use nodes anyway. Okay, so if we were to convert this to a node editor, there it is. Now, when we're working with environment, we need to change from the object node data here to the world. Okay, and now we can see we've got a simple node set up, which is the background we set up, the color, and the world output, which is basically the node that renders it on your screen. Right. So I was when I was looking at this in a rendered view, it's very, very bright, so I probably need to reduce the strength here. So let me reduce that to, it's going to be trial and error. Now this is laggy while it's rendering. If you look at the top of the viewport, you see it's got tracing, sample and number. It's set to 32. Okay, but while it's sampling up, it does lag Blender. One of those things, we've got to put up with it. Let's change that to say 0.6 and see how that looks. Probably still a bit strong. 0.4. Okay, it's lagging because I'm still rendering. Go into solid. Be easiest. 0.4. No, I'll press 0.6, 0.4. Get it right. There you go. Turn off my ambient occlusion here because it's not giving me anything. It's not talking to me. It's giving me no information that I need. Okay, back into render view. So now, because we're reducing the strength of the world background, essentially the lighting, we're starting to pick up more detail on it, which is great. However, it should be remembered that once again this is a floor and a bed floating in space. It's not really representative of a room. So let's add some walls. So I'll edit the plane. I will select these three vertices and I will extrude upwards on the Z or the Z axis, so E and Z, to bring in some walls. Okay, let's go into an object mode here again. Now let's start to look at what we're getting. So rendered, and we'll give this a couple of seconds for the samples to kind of build up. And I hear someone whistling outside. You probably can't hear it. I was just thinking, who on earth is that? Okay, that's looking good. It's starting to look like a bed inside a room. We're picking up kind of like shadow detail. You can see the shadow underneath the bed, which means that if we look at the corner of, come on, render, it's sticking at 18. I wonder why that is. There we go, it's gone to 32. Okay, so you can see, we're kind of darker down here because we're getting a shadow from the underneath of the bed. It's lighter here because there's nothing, but we can see the darkness here, and we're starting to get some realistic views. However, a bed is rarely in the middle of a floor. Usually it'll be up against a wall. So I could select all the pieces of my bed and move it, but it's probably going to be easier since my backdrop is already selected, just to drag that across an X and move the bed up against the wall or close to the wall. Right, so let's come in a bit closer and we'll do a rendered view here again, and we'll give it a couple of seconds. You can see it counting up now, up in the top of the view. Path tracing sample, that's at sample 5 at 32, and we'll just give that a second. My computer's acting very, very slow today. probably stalling out because of the ambient inclusion. It does tend to do that. There we go. 26, 27. So, if you were to be making a product for creators and you're just supplying it with ambient inclusion maps and stuff like this, this is actually a good way to show off your product, you know, with just ambient occlusion and lighting. You know, if you're making an advert for the marketplace or something like that, and we could do that with a full render the way it is, set up a camera and do a full render. But anyway, I digress a little. But we'll see now that we're starting to get some darkness along the back edge of the bed, which we would expect if it's against a wall. We've got a lot of light coming in from top, but then we've got no ceiling on the room. But it's starting to look like a product, and I'm kind of very happy with the way this is looking now. You know, this is representative of how you can get your textures to look in Second Life. And of course, being a blank, you're not getting distracted by the actual colour in the textures. You know, you're able to see detail clearly that would be hard to see, but still needs to be there on a fully textured product. But no, that's looking pretty good. So let me just go back to a solid view. Of course, rooms normally have a ceiling, so I'll put this in edit mode. I've got these three already selected. I'm going to make a face. I'm going to select these two vertices, and I'm going to subdivide with the W key to create a vertex middle. I'm going to select that vertex, go into a top view, and just grab that across, bring it somewhere over there, so it looks more like a ceiling. And this will kind of block out some of the light from above, same as a ceiling would in a normal room. What I'm trying to do here is go through with you step by step how I build up my lighting. So this is going to look more kind of realistic again. So we'll go into our rendered view and just wait for it to build the picture up, as it were. I should talk a little about how Cycles does build up the colour in a picture, but we'll do that a bit later on. At the minute, I'm just more interested in seeing how this is starting to look. And as a product, even with a small amount of detail that's coming out now, we're on very low samples, it's starting to look pretty good to me. I'm liking what I'm seeing, and I'm happy with the way the bed has turned out. 18. I'm just counting the samples again. Alright, I'm going to pause, and as soon as I say I'm going to pause, it starts counting quickly. It's always the way. 24 out of 32. Yeah, I'm going to pause. Okay, and we're back. So yeah, it's gone up to its 32 samples. Now you see this does look grainy, and that is purely because we don't have very many samples at all. Cycles calculates the light by bouncing light off the pixel, the part of the object you see, but bouncing it off everything around it as well. So you know, if you had a white bed next to a black wall, a lot of that blackness would show up on the bed because the light kind of you know, it bounced off the white bed, but then it would bounce off the black wall, losing some of its light, and the light that comes and bounces back again, it's a lot of bounces, isn't it, would be duller. So Cycles basically builds up you know, kind of layer by layer the true colour. Okay, so where I was heading with this is, as it's building up that true colour, in the early stages it gets very, very kind of grainy and you know, kind of messy. You see here, you know, the one sample again, it's looking horrendous. So let me come into a solid view. if it'll let me. Blender gets very laggy when it's calculating samples. So we're going to solid view. Come on, behave. There we go. And we can set the number of samples in camera tab here. And if we come down to sampling, we'll see that we've got two numbers here for samples. First one is preview, which is 32, which is what we were getting, and the second is 128, which is render. So if I wanted to look at the bed in a higher quality, I could increase these samples. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase this to 128 for a moment. Okay, I'm going to rotate my view to something representative, and because I was Control Z or Z in back earlier, I lost my ceiling. So let me reinstate that. So F for face there. I can deselect this one. I can subdivide what's left. I can select that. Go into a top view. I grab it. So we kind of got a ceiling there. It's easy enough. So let's come in. Let's kind of position our view to something where we can see what's going on. And there we go. Alright, so I've set my samples to 128, so I'm just going to do a render view again, just so you can see the difference. But I'm not going to talk all the way through. It's probably going to take, for 3 or 4 minutes, so I'll pause while it's doing it. So, the render view, and I'll see you in a second. Okay, so that's finished rendering the 128 samples up here. You can see it's a lot less grainy. We're getting rid of the noise in the picture because we're adding more and more detail with every sample. And it gives me a clearer idea of what my product's starting to look like. And like I say, I'm quite happy with it. It may be hard to see in the video, but I can see, detail on the sheet where the creases and the folds are. I can see detail on the legs here. I'm not getting any kind of clashing up here. I'm getting shadowing where I want it, where it should be dark, like underneath the cylinder here and such, and it's looking pretty good. So this is a time to kind of like tweak your lighting. What you're aiming for is something that's fairly evenly lit, but you do want a bit of variation in the light, which the walls are giving it. It's giving the light something to bounce off and lessen intensity slightly, to just give it that slight variation in the light to pick out the detail. So yeah, that's quite happy. Now normally I don't do this, but what I'm going to do now is set up a camera and do an actual product render, just so as we progress down in the lessons we've got something to refer back to. And also, if you were going to sell this as a builder's product just with AOs, like I say, it's a good product rendering. So let me come back into solid view, and to do a product render, let's go to object mode here, we do need a camera. So let me add a camera, Shift A, camera, and it's added a camera underneath the bed here. So let me pull it up. You can see it's kind of stuck way in the wall there. Let me pull this out. It's not pointed anywhere near the bed, so let me rotate on the Z-axis towards the bed, and if I go to my numpad 0, it shows me my camera view. Okay, it locks the viewport into the camera perspective. Camera's already selected, so I can GY, bring this over, GX, bring the camera in. If you happen to middle mouse out of it, just press your numpad 0 again. So G Z, bring the bed down on it a bit. I probably want my camera rotated because there's a lot of space here that I don't need to be seeing, and I can make the bed bigger. So easy way to do that. This normally defaults to your monitor size, but my monitor happens to be 920 by 1080. If I just swap these, 1080 by 1920, 1920. Okay, you see I've got more of this bed in. I can probably pull this out a bit. GX, GY, center it up a bit. Okay, so I've got my camera, focus on my bed. Let's go into camera view again. I'm just looking down here. Yep. The rest of it we don't really need to worry about there. Yeah, so now to get a render of it, I can simply press my F12 key. So I press the F12 key, and you see this picture builds up tile by tile. It also gives you an estimation of time, which in the top of the viewport it's saying remaining 2:35. So I'm just going to pause while this carries on. Okay, so that render's finished. Yeah, it's recording. So this is basically a picture now. I mean, we can take it into Photoshop and crop it, or do whatever we want. But like I say, I don't normally do this. It's just so while we're doing these lessons, we've got something to reference. So if you wanted to save this picture, come to your image and save as image, desktop. Let's call this bed render 1. I'm going to save it as an RGB, not with an alpha channel. It's just something I tend to do unless I specifically want transparency for some reason. So we can save that as image. Okay. Right, I'm just gonna find this render. It should be here somewhere. Where are we going? There it is. I'm going to pull it across in Windows Picture Viewer. So you can see it is an image. So anyway, you can see just by setting up some very simple environmental lighting and a bit of scenery, a simple backdrop. We had two walls, a ceiling and a floor. We've introduced so much detail into the texturing of this model before we've even started texturing. With the shadows, and it's picking out all the little details. The shadow under the pillows there. Go away. The difference in colours between the half hidden parts and the exposed parts, and we've done all of this without adding a single lamp. So many people get into texturing with Blender and they'll start adding lamps, and well, actually let's go back into 3D view here, and I think I'm done with my camera for the minute, so I'm just going to delete it because it's kind of in the way. Okay, so many people have start out, and they'll start out with just the bed. Let me hide this. They'll start out with just the bed, and so they'll add a lamp. They'll shift in, they'll add a lamp, and they'll add a sun lamp, and they'll bring it up and rotate it slightly, and then they'll, well, actually let's do this. Let us strength of 0.4, just make a mental note of that. Let us delete these two nodes. So effectively we've got rid of environment light. If we look back here, it's no service. Okay, so we've added a sun lamp, and let's do just a viewport render. Okay, so I've got this, but you see how it's very harsh, and you're not going to get a view. And I'll think, okay, well, alright, it's harsh. Let's reduce the strength of it. So I'll come across to a lamp tab here. Let me reduce that sampling down, because I'm not going to wait for 128 samples. That is ridiculous. Oh, the other thing I did do is when I made my picture render, I increased the render value to 500. So let's make that 128 again, and let's make this 32, which was the default. Okay. So that's probably a better view. You're losing a lot of this kind of detail, the line and the shadow in there. I mean, you're getting some of it, but not all of it. But then you think, okay, well, that's too harsh. It's too kind of monotone. It's just too. There's not enough contrast in it. So you think, okay, well, what I can do is I can reduce the strength of the lamp. Let's make that half of what it was, or thereabouts, 0.6. Yeah, it's looking dark over in the corner over here. So let's go back to a solid view. Okay, so I can add another lamp over here, say, so I'll shift A and I'll add a point lamp, and I'll bring it over here, to add some light over here, and then it'll start to look dark over here, so I'll add another lamp over here, so I'll duplicate that one and bring it over here, and start really getting into a tizzy about lamps, so if we render that now, you see now we're getting bright lamp over here, nothing over here, and it's all starting to look a bit, how you doing? It's and people really get themselves into a mess. These acorns on top of the post here are starting to look like globe lamps, because they're picking up the light from underneath and not on top, and just that the whole lighting setup is not uniform. So I mean, I used to do it this way until I learned better, and it took a while to learn better and to learn how to do it properly. But it's worth learning it straight away. So let me delete these lamps. So delete that one, delete that one, delete that one. We'll add in some environment lighting again. So no output node. It's because I deleted everything. Will that bring that? No, it won't. So let's delete that again. Shift A, let's add an input, which would be not an input. Well, the output would be the world output. We need that. There we go. That's brought this back to surface none, and we need a background. Okay, so we had that, and we had this at 0.4. Okay, so I've restored our settings there. Let's unhide our backdrop. Bring more into perspective mode here. Now, I don't know if I've explained this before. Now, use my middle mouse wheel, scrolls in and out. If I press Shift and middle mouse wheel, it'll pan up and down. And similarly, if I press Control and middle mouse wheel, it'll pan left to right. So that's another way to kind of position things where you want. So anyway, back to the rendered view. Just give it a second to kind of build up its picture. But you see, we're getting much more kind of natural lighting, more what we'd expect. And although it's hard to see on a textured product, you notice it if it's not there. That's when your textures all look kind of like flat. There's no life in them. You do want the variance in light, and we've achieved that very, very simply with just a simple environment setup. No need for lamps at all. Right, so we're going to stop here, and when we come back we'll start with the UV unwrapping.